Breaking news. We are tracking a surge of high-priority alerts flooding in right now. We're talking about a potential biological crisis deep within the Russian military apparatus. I'm seeing unverified comms, leaked telegram chatter, and social media signals suggesting a massive, uncontrolled outbreak of the Nipah virus among Russian troops.
It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. And look, if these reports are even partially accurate, we are looking at a pathogen with a mortality rate of up to 75%, tearing through a nuclear-armed power in the middle of a war.
The stakes could not be higher. We have to ask, is this a natural spillover event? Or is something much more sinister happening behind the new Iron Curtain? Before we get to the truth, a quick word for our listeners who stand with democracy and want the real story on European security. Kules, subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on the war in Ukraine and the future of the alliance, you need to be with us. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the intersection of a deadly viral outbreak in India, panic across Asia, and this very strange, terrifying narrative emerging about Russian troops under quarantine.
It's good to be here. We have a massive stack of sources today, ranging from WHO situation reports and Indian Ministry of Health data to some really sharp geopolitical analyses on pathogen spillover. Our mission for this discussion is to separate biological fact from information warfare. We need to figure out if the Russian military is actually dissolving under the weight of a plague, or if this is, just another symptom of the information war surrounding their illegal invasion of Ukraine.
And we are going to get to the bottom of that because this story has everything. I mean, a virus that kills 3 out of 4 people it touches, a mystery in the Russian army that seems, frankly, too good to be true for their adversaries, and a diplomatic crisis brewing across Asia. But first, let's get right into the Russian situation because my feed is absolutely blowing up. I'm seeing videos of trucks, soldiers in full hazmat gear talk about mass quarantines. The headline everyone is whispering is Nipah. Whoa. Now, most people know Nipah isn't the flu, it's a nightmare bug. And the rumor is that it has hit the Russian army hard. What are we actually looking at here? Is there any fire behind the smoke?
It is certainly a buzzing narrative, and it's designed to be terrifying. You have reports of mystery illness, claims that thousands of troops are being isolated. But if we look at the source material, specifically this report, pathogen spillover and geopolitical friction, we need to hit the brakes hard. The verdict from the experts, including biosurveillance analysts watching the region, is that this is almost certainly an informational crisis, not a biological one.
You sound pretty confident, but how can you be sure? If Russia says everything is fine, my instinct, and probably the instinct of most of our listeners who follow the war, is to assume the exact opposite. They aren't exactly known for their transparency.
No, and that is a fair instinct given the Kremlin's track record. They've lied about troop movements, they've lied about casualties, they have lied about their objectives in Ukraine from day one. However, in this specific case, we have to look at the biology, not the politics. And this is where the concept of a biological barrier comes in. The Nipah virus has a very specific natural reservoir, the Pteropus fruit bat, also known as the flying fox.
Okay, the flying fox. I'm assuming they don't migrate to Siberia.
Exactly. These bats are strictly tropical. They live in India, Bangladesh, Southeast Asia. They require specific fruit sources, specific temperatures to survive. They do not, and biologically cannot, survive in the Russian winter, especially not in February. The temperature difference is lethal to them.
So, unless the Russian army has a secret battalion of tropical fruit bats they're keeping warm in a hangar somewhere, a natural outbreak is effectively impossible.
That is the reality. Rospotrebnadzor, which is Russia's health watchdog, has officially ruled out a threat for exactly this reason. A top epidemiologist there, Viktor Maliyev, went on record saying the ecological conditions just don't exist. Now, usually I take Russian statements with a huge grain of salt, but here the science backs them up. But this is where it gets really fascinating from a disinformation perspective.
Because there is footage, right? I'm not imagining the clips of troops being locked down and field hospitals being set up. That video exists. I've seen it on X, on Telegram.
You aren't imagining it. The footage is real. But you aren't seeing footage from 2026. You're likely seeing footage from April 2020.
2020, so this is recycled content.
It appears so. Back then, about 15,000 Russian troops were quarantined. They were rehearsing for the Victory Day parade, and they had a massive outbreak of COVID-19. The logistics were a mess. Troops were sick. It looked bad. It was a humiliating moment for their military.
I remember that. It was a PR disaster for them at the time. So someone has just dug up that old video file, stripped the metadata, and slapped a Nipah 2026 caption on it.
Precisely. It's a classic kernel of truth tactic in information warfare. You take real video of Russian military weakness-sick troops, logistical chaos, hazmat suits, and you repackage it with a new scarier label like Nipah. The goal is to create panic, or project the idea that the Russian army is crumbling from within, that they're too sick to fight.
It fits the timeline perfectly, doesn't it? We are in a really high-stakes month. The New START nuclear treaty is set to expire in just a few days, on February 5th. Tensions are through the roof. It feels like the perfect time to inject a chaos agent like this into the news cycle.
And don't forget the broader context of the war. Russia has spent years accusing Ukraine and the U.S. of running secret biolabs. It's been a staple of their propaganda since the invasion. They tried to justify their aggression by claiming Ukraine was making bioweapons. Now the tables are turned. There's a certain irony in Russia scrambling to deny a biological crisis within its own ranks. It acts as a massive distraction.
It really does feel like a distraction. If everyone is talking about a fake plague, nobody's talking about their actual strategic failures on the ground. So the Russian outbreak is likely a ghost story, a digital phantom designed to mess with our heads. But, and this is a big but, the virus itself isn't fake. While we're debunking the Russian angle, there is a very real, very scary situation unfolding in India right now. And that's where the actual biology is happening.
That's right. We need to shift our focus from the fog of war in Russia to the hard data coming out of West Bengal. This is the real ground zero.
Walk us through the timeline here. This started in Barasat, right? Near Kolkata.
Yes. The timeline begins in late December 2025. We have two healthcare workers, both nurses, young people aged between 20 and 30, one female, one male. They started showing symptoms, and by January 13th, the National Institute of Virology in Pune confirmed it, Nipah.
Healthcare workers being the first confirmed cases is always the red flag, isn't it? It usually implies they didn't get it from a bat in a tree. They probably got it from a patient.
Exactly. It points to what we call a nosocomial transmission.
Nosocomial.
It's a technical term for a hospital-acquired infection.
Yeah.
It means the virus is spreading efficiently from human to human in a clinical setting. That is always the tipping point for epidemiologists. The male nurse has since been discharged, which is great news. The female nurse was critical, on a ventilator, but reports say she has improved and is under observation.
That's a relief for them. But usually when you have human-to-human transmission in a hospital, you have a massive contact tracing problem. You've got patients, families, other staff.
You do. But the Indian authorities didn't take any chances. They traced nearly 200 contacts immediately. And they did something really impressive. They deployed a mobile BSL-3 lab.
A BSL-3 lab on wheels. That sounds like something out of a techno thriller. For the listeners, BSL-3 is biosafety level 3, right? That's for handling serious, potentially lethal agents.
Correct. BSL-3 is for high-security pathogens that can transmit through the air. Rolling a facility like that into a local district shows how seriously they take this. They wanted rapid on-site testing without the delay of shipping samples. The good news? All contacts tested negative. Locally, in West Bengal, the outbreak appears to be contained.
It's interesting to contrast that competence with the chaos we usually see reporting on the Russian side of things. India shut this down fast. So if it's contained and the contacts are negative, why is the rest of Asia freaking out? I'm looking at reports from Pakistan, Vietnam, Thailand. Everyone is slamming the doors shut. It feels disproportionate if the fire is already out.
It feels disproportionate until you look at the profile of the virus. Nipah isn't like other viruses. To understand the panic, we have to do a deep dive on the pathogen itself. Why is it so feared? Why does the mere mention of it cause governments to shut borders?
Let's get into the profile of this killer. What makes Nipah the stuff of nightmares compared to, say, a bad flu season or even COVID?
First, and most terrifyingly, is the kill rate. We all lived through COVID-19, where the mortality rate was, what, a percentage point or two?
Yeah.
And that shut down the world. Nipah's mortality rate ranges from 40 to 75%.
75%. That's essentially a coin toss where you lose 3 out of 4 times. That is astronomical.
It's devastating. And the way it kills is brutal. It attacks the brain. It starts like the flu fever, headache, but within 24 to 48 hours, it can progress to acute encephalitis.
Encephalitis is brain swelling, right?
Yes. The brain swells inside the skull. Patients go into comas. They have seizures. It's a horrific way to die. And because it's a zoonotic virus jumping from animals to humans, it's unpredictable.
You mentioned animals earlier. We talked about the bats. Is that the only vector?
Bats are the reservoir, But pigs are often the amplifier. The bats eat fruit, drop the fruit into a pig pen, the pigs eat it, get a massive viral load, and then pass it to farmers. But again, that human-to-human element is the real game changer.
There's also a silent danger I read about in the briefing notes, something about the incubation period that makes me very nervous.
This is the part that keeps biosecurity experts up at night. The incubation period, the time between catching the virus and showing symptoms, is usually 4 to 14 days. That's standard. But there have been documented cases where the virus stayed dormant for up to 45 days.
45 days. So, hypothetically, you could catch it, fly halfway around the world, pass a dozen health checks, live your life for a month and a half, and then suddenly drop into a coma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes screening at borders incredibly difficult. You can verify travel history for 21 days, which is what Pakistan is doing right now. But if the virus is hiding for 45, you have a massive security gap. You're looking for a threat that isn't visible yet.
And the treatment. If you do catch it, what can doctors do?
There isn't one. No vaccine, no cure. The only treatment is supportive care, keeping the patient hydrated and ventilated while their body tries to fight off a monster.
That explains the reaction. If I'm a government official in Vietnam or Thailand and I hear 75% mortality and 45-day incubation, I am not waiting for permission to close the border.
No, you aren't. And that's what we are seeing. Pakistan has implemented strict and enhanced health surveillance. They're doing 100% screening of travelers. Vietnam went even further. They classified Nipah as a Group A infectious disease. That's their highest threat level. Mandatory isolation for anyone even suspected of having it.
And we're seeing similar moves from Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Even Kazakhstan is strengthening sanitary controls, specifically watching arrivals from India and Southeast Asia.
It reflects a massive disconnect. On one hand, you have the WHO saying the risk is low global and moderate subnational. They're looking at the data, seeing the negative tests, and saying it's fine. On the other hand, you have countries acting like the zombie apocalypse is at the gates.
It feels like a massive trust issue. We're living in a post-COVID world. Nobody wants to be the country that reacted too late. That scar tissue from 2020 is still very fresh. And frankly, with the geopolitical tensions we see with Russia and Ukraine, the global temperature is already hot. People are jumpy.
Precisely. And this is where we circle back to the defense angle. In February 2026, trust is the rarest currency on the planet. Governments don't trust international bodies as much as they used to, and they certainly don't trust their neighbors.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture? We're a defense show. Why does a virus in West Bengal matter to the conflict in Europe or the strategic balance?
Because health is a weapon. Or at least the fear of a health crisis is a weapon. We talked about the Russian rumors earlier. Think about the timing. It is February 2026. The world is chaotic.
Yeah, let's look at the sidebar context from our sources. We have reports of drone strikes hitting Belgorod. We have French military contingents landing in Armenia to support stability there. We have the capture of Maduro by U.S. forces. The geopolitical pot is boiling over.
And in the middle of that boiling pot, you drop a rumor about a 75% mortality virus hitting a major army. Even if it's not true, it forces the enemy to waste resources proving it's not true. It affects morale, it disrupts logistics.
And the source, pathogen spillover, mentioned that Nipah is a Category C priority pathogen. It's on the list of things that could be weaponized. That has to play into the psychology here.
That anxiety is always there. Every time there's a natural outbreak, the intelligence community has to ask, is this nature or is this a test run? The CDC is monitoring this closely. They say they are ready to assist, but the experts warn that the U.S. is at risk if it doesn't pay attention. We are just as vulnerable to that 45-day incubation window as anyone else.
It's fascinating how fragile we are. A virus doesn't need to infect a single soldier to do damage. It just needs to infect the information space.
That's the so what here. A virus that kills 75% of its hosts is a tactical nightmare if it's real. But a disinformation campaign that convinces the world your army is dying, that's a strategic nightmare. It projects weakness. And in a war like the one we're seeing in Ukraine, weakness is an invitation for attack. It makes Russia look unstable, unmanaged, and vulnerable.
It really highlights the vulnerability of the Russian state right now. Whether they're sick or just being targeted by an info op, the fact that the rumors stuck so easily says a lot about their internal disarray. People believe it because it's plausible that the Russian military would mishandle a health crisis.
It does. It reminds us of the 2020 quarantine. It reminds the world that their logistics are often hanging by a thread. If people are willing to believe the Russian army is collapsing from a bat virus, it means they already believe the Russian army is on the brink of collapse generally.
So let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground, from biology to information warfare. What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
First, the Russian outbreak is likely a digital phantom. It's a mix of old footage, ecological impossibility, remember the tropical bats in winter, and information warfare designed to exploit tensions and distract from Russia's failures.
Second, the outbreak in India is real. It's small, it's contained thanks to a rapid response, but statistically it is terrifying. And that 45-day incubation period means we aren't out of the woods yet.
And finally, the global reaction shows just how fragile trust is. Countries are shutting doors based on fear,
Yeah.
not just WHO data. The international system is jumpy.
It's a dangerous mix, biology and bullets.
I want to leave the listener with a question. In this era of hybrid warfare, what is actually more dangerous? A virus that kills 75% of the people it infects? Or a disinformation campaign that can convince the world that an enemy army is already dead, altering geopolitical calculations overnight? If we can't tell the difference between a sick soldier and a meme, we are vulnerable to both.
That is a chilling thought to end on. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex Anaria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.